Good afternoon, and welcome to yet another podcast in APF's PAC Network series. Today, we're focusing on women changemakers and celebrating the remarkable stories of young leaders who are not only breaking barriers, but also redefining what it means to create change. This series is all about amplifying the voices of trailblazing girls who have turned their passion into purpose, building impactful nonprofits that address critical challenges in their communities. This podcast is hosted by Amna Akram, APF board member, former litigator, and current entrepreneur, who is the founder of Quran, a digital literacy app focused on children's well being and enabling rich conversations that lead to a better understanding of the world around us. Today, we are thrilled to feature two extraordinary women, Amaani and Samia, who have taken bold steps to address pressing issues in Pakistan. Amaani, the founder of Providentia Books, is revolutionizing access to literature through a nationwide book sharing initiative, enabling students in cities like Karachi, Lahore, and Peshawar to enjoy quality books that might otherwise be out of reach. Samia, the visionary behind NASAI, is leading a grassroots movement to tackle menstrual and reproductive health taboos in underserved areas, empowering girls with education and resources that they've been denied. Through their stories, we'll explore what it means to balance school and leadership, the power of grassroots activism, and the unique challenges and rewards of being young Pakistani-American changemakers. We'll also discuss how their innovative approaches have impacted thousands of lives around us, inspiring all of us to think bigger and act bolder. Let's dive in and hear firsthand what it takes to turn a dream into a movement. Over to you, Amna.
Assalamu alaikum. So happy to be here. It's not every day that we have these young, ambitious, and empowered women. So I'm so delighted to have you here. Want to start, with a very cliche, it may be, but necessary. Briefly tell us about your journey so far. We'll start with Amani.
Sure. So I guess starting a nonprofit has sort of been like a journey of identifying a problem, like building a solution, and also constantly learning along the way. I've been doing this for the past 4 or 5 years, so I definitely know how to, I guess, develop more easily now than it was at the beginning.
So when did you start?
I started in eighth grade, but the app wasn't launched till the end of ninth grade, so it's been running for about 4 years now.
That's fantastic. And Samia, what about you? When did you start, and what's been your journey so far?
So I started a little later into my academic career, so to speak. So I started in the 10th grade, and so far it's been challenging but definitely rewarding in many respects. Just being able to work with all these bright minds has been truly a humbling and just eye-opening experience for me.
So would love to hear more about that. So what sparked it? Like there's such distinct areas of interest, and to just briefly sum it up, in one word, Amani's nonprofit is like a big book bank, I would call it, and that's fantastic. And Samia is providing, I think, in basic terms, hygiene education and products to Pakistani women, and also is talking about the reproduction rights and the safety networks they have. So what really the very, very interesting topics, especially when it comes to our society in Pakistan, both are taboo. It's education and menstrual health or women's health. So would love to hear what sparked your interest. You living in New York, both of you are from New York City. So would love to hear what really ignited.
Sure, I can start. So I guess there were sort of two moments for me that inspired Providentia. So the first time when I was about 7 years old, and I noticed that there was this bus that was parked outside my grandparents' house in Karachi, like in our alleyway. And it looked like a school bus, but it was green and had flower patterns, so I knew that it was a bit different from like the yellow school buses that I was used to in New York. So I
Mm.
was sort of curious by the school bus, and I asked my grandfather to take me to the school bus one day. And when
Mhm.
we had gone up the steps to the school bus, I noticed that there were like little children about my age, and sitting in seats with like tables in front of them with books. And the headmistress had sort of explained to us in Urdu that this wasn't just a school bus, it was a bus for school. So these children were like learning on the bus and they weren't like in an actual like school institution. So that was the first sort of moment. But then the second time was when I was in eighth grade and my grandfather had told me about this book publishing institution that would trash their excess books. So I guess those sort of moments kind of like collided and inspired me to start Providentia.
Mm-hmm. So exciting. So was it a non-for-profit that the book bus in Karachi, or was it a state provided, state funded um, platform?
I'm assuming it was a nonprofit, but the headmistress had sort of explained that a lot of the children's parents didn't want them going far to learn, so
Oh,
they kept them on this bus so they could come home and like do chores for their parents.
oh, that is so cool. Samia, what about you?
So my parents are from Gujarat, so we live in a very like rural setting. So over the years, I tend to visit a lot. So like it's on and off every summer. So I just
Mm,
catch glimpses into what their lived experience is. But when I go, I really try to embody like their struggles, their accomplishments, like just how creative and intelligent they are in living with just the bare minimum and how resourceful they need to be. So just embracing the entire experience and having this frequent exposure to that experience, I
mhm,
guess, kind of gave me the mindset I needed to talk to people and like kind of identify problems that were present within my community. So when I'm at home, like in New York, I tend to make it a priority to connect with my cousins who still live there. So especially like one time in one instance, I was talking to my two cousins who are like educated over there, and they were kind of discussing their like lived experience there and how like they get educated and whatnot. And they said that like something or a factor that impacts and prevents them from attending school regularly is like the lack of sanitary supplies, specifically period products that are offered to them during school. So they can't like consistently go because it's either they prioritize their health and well-being or their academics. And I really thought this was a pressing challenge, and for it to be happening to someone so close to me, I really took it personal, and like that sparked
mhm.
my like motivation to create change.
Yeah. So if you can build on that a little bit and tell me what's your ultimate goal, or I would say if you mission in one line, what do you want to see in the next phase or stage of your organization?
I want to see more independent women. So
Mhm,
that is the most like simplest way I can put it, but like kind of empowering these young women to take
mhm,
independence, not only financially, but in their education and just the way that they live their lives. Something really important to me, but that can only happen when they're not solely focused on kind of accommodating for their health. Like that should be a priority for them, but education should be as well. And it's only if we accommodate and provide for these bare minimum resources that they're able to expand their mindset and think about the future
mhm.
and think about how they want to accomplish and achieve for themselves.
Right, right. I mean, it shouldn't be either or, right? It shouldn't be like, okay, I'm going to be in bed, or I agree with you 100%. And Amani, Amani, tell me again. I know I forget that you reminded me, how many books have you already collected in your book bank, and how many have you been able to distribute?
So currently we have over 57K right now, like in our deposits, and we've donated over 55K.
And so, what's your goal in the next, say, in the next 1 or 2 years? Where do you see this?
I mean, to collect as many books as possible. I
Mm,
really want to like milk the sort of books from our resources as well, and the institutions that do provide their excess books. So I guess maybe this is impossible, but my target is to sort of reach out to every single like book publishing institution that does have excess books, just so
mm.
I can hit all corners.
So tell me, are you getting on that collecting books, and are you getting any support from the local government and or organizations in Pakistan? And Samia, same question for you. Would want to learn a little bit more about your experiences, if support specifically from that community for both organizations.
Yeah, so it's a bit separated from the government just because this is a nonprofit, but I do
Mm-hmm.
get a lot of support from TCF and other schools that do want to connect like my nonprofit to like the children and their students. So they do put up a lot of like flyers for me and posters, and I do have like an online social media presence as well, so I think that's another way.
Mm-hmm. Samia, what about you? Any help or any support from the local community or?
And when I first introduced the project just to like my local like village over there, they were really like excited to take that initiative. So
Mhm.
just having local philanthropists and people who are willing to donate to the cause, as well as local public and private schools. So it's a very different experience contacting each sector because obviously for the government schools, they don't get funding, so they're willing to like take in whatever external like
Mhm.
help that they need. But for the private schools, such as like the Garrison Academy, you have to do a little more like a strategic approach to it because they're a little more hesitant to accept like these external like help from other people without like I guess passing a few guidelines. So
Mhm.
outreach for both has been pretty different.
I see, I see. And what's been the biggest challenge working, you being in New York City and running these organizations there?
So for me, the Providentia started off as an app, but from New York, I realized that a lot of people who would want to like collect books and donate books, probably wouldn't have like access to a phone. So we sort of had to transition to a website instead. So people could go to like their local like computers or whatever, like at
Mhm.
schools and sign up for book donations. So that was probably the biggest challenge I had, like transitioning from an app to a website.
I see.
And for me, I just guess like conveying my message to local public and private schools, as I said before, the outreach process is extremely different. So just kind of getting them to support the mission, get behind the mission, because obviously both sectors were initially hesitant at first to kind of even conceptualize what like this mission and what the projects that we were offering to them even meant for the school and for the schooling of these young girls, but kind of communicating with them and getting them to understand the scope of this project and what it could mean for these students was, I guess, the
Mhm.
most challenging part.
Was there a lot of awareness that had to be expended there and brought into light the issues? Do you feel that the schools needed that? And you know how it is a lot of times, this, especially when it comes to women's and girls' menstrual health and their products, it's such a taboo still in our country, and it just swept under the rug. So were people uncomfortable discussing it? And just another question just leading to is like, how comfortable were you discussing it because you're so young and discussing it and just explaining it, the importance of it, bringing awareness to the younger girls, but not only younger girls, it was just the adults there.
So in like both sectors, there was obviously like this gap in like how much each knew about menstrual education and like advocacy. So
Mhm.
in terms of the government schools, there was a lot more hesitation to accept
Mhm.
sanitary supplies or accept funding to reconstruct the bathrooms over there even. So you have to like I guess it's you have to be more culturally sensitive into
Mhm.
how you're conveying your message. So sometimes you have to step over topics and kind of weave them through using like cultural sensitive means. But for obviously the city districts, like they had education that was kind of tailored to it already existing, but we wanted to improve and build on that existing infrastructure so it can be
Mhm.
more well-rounded and more impactful time for these
Mhm.
girls.
I see. I see. So how you both, I understand, seniors, right, in high school. So how do you balance your work and running these organizations a few continents away?
So for me, I think my nonprofit is something that I'm super excited by. So it's not really on par with like the burden of me having to do homework. I'm genuinely excited about like outreaching and doing research and like finding new ways to advertise the nonprofit. So
Mhm.
if I have spare time, I'm always thinking about Providentia and finding ways to expand.
Mhm.
And as for me, like anyone who knows me knows like I'm an obsessive planner. So I do have like distinct planners for both my academics and NASAI. So kind
Mhm.
of prioritizing each with given their proportionate amount of time has been important for me just to give each their own time and to kind of balance both schoolwork and both like project timelines and whatnot. So for my academic calendars, obviously it's the conventional school stuff, but for NASAI, I have like timelines and like drafts of like potential projects I want to do and like emails for people who I want to outreach to. So they're very distinct from each other, but in this way, I'm able to prioritize both.
Yeah. So would you say that what's the best? I guess you started earlier, Amani, in eighth grade, and Samia, you started. Is there if someone if a student was thinking in these on these lines, starting an organization or a cause that's close to their heart, the younger you are, the harder it is. I feel sometimes. Is there any word of advice? Which brings me really to the core question: the support system that you have in place. I would love to learn a little bit more about it, how you started it, who supported you, your school, your community, your parents, your families. Would love to hear how this was taken in and then brought into where you are.
So I guess my advice is if you have the inclination or the urge to make a change, like be very proactive and start immediately because I
Mhm.
think the longer you wait, the more you'll like, push it off. And in terms of my support system, my father and my grandfather have probably been like the closest mentors for me. And every time I sort of like maybe hit a roadblock where one institution just didn't want to donate their books to me, they sort of were the ones who like encouraged me to keep going and to find that one person in a million who would want to listen and hear me out. So yeah.
The advice that I would give to someone who wants to start a nonprofit or any type of initiative, whether it be like just creating a blog or launching an app, is to take the first step. But obviously, like that's easier said than done. So
Mhm.
what you need to like kind of take this monumental step is to think critically just in your day to day. So that involves like having opinions on issues, looking at the world around you, absorbing news and absorbing news from different like outlets and whatnot, and then taking stances on issues that are important to you, and only then are you like in that position to kind of have the ambition to start initiative and then follow through with it, because without thinking critically and like being aware of what's happening in your day to day and around the world, like you don't have that drive to kind of start something that can scale into something that's like a global initiative. And
Mhm.
some of the biggest supporters along the way for me was obviously my parents, but then my sister too, who actually helped me co-found the organization. So
Mhm.
through her like contacts with schools, because she was attending college at the time, so she had contacts from other colleges as well, like a network of CUNYs and SUNYs and like private colleges
Mhm.
across the US that we were able to outreach to and kind of expand our mission. And then she was also really integral in helping me realize how much we could scale this project.
Mhm.
Sometimes, as like a founder, you can get lost in the logistics and you adopt like
Mhm.
this kind of pessimistic outlook on like how much you're even able to achieve, considering your age and like how limited
Mhm.
your resources are. But she really
Yeah.
helped me visualize like what this mission could be.
It's so important, I think, just to have your family back you up, right? And you think you can, like, you really feel like you can take over the world with that kind of support. Tell me more if there's a story from both of your that you could share that was kind of like reinforced your belief in your mission. That would be great.
So I guess one story about like 2 summers ago while I was a volunteer teacher at a TCF school that had partnered with Providentia. I remember a boy was like in about first or second grade walked up to me and he asked me if mermaids existed in America. And I asked him why he was curious about that, and he was like, "Well, I've always loved reading about mermaid stories." And he sort of pulled out a book that I knew had come in one of the boxes from Providentia,
Mhm.
and I just realized that because I had donated one of those books that I guess I had helped like a child expand his imagination. So that was definitely a driving factor for me, rewarding as well.
Mhm. That's great. So, what did you tell him? Did they exist or no?
I told him I told him that there are like mermaid parks in Florida.
That's great. I think Einstein said it to somebody that this woman walked up to him and said, "What should I do for my child to be as smart as you?" And I said, just ask him to read books, and not any books, but fantasy books and fiction. So there's no limit to it. Samia, is there a story that you could share with us that was uh, that reinforced, good or bad, right? It could be an experience which is a little sour as well, that reinforced that I need to continue doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, sure. So I was just about to like get into that kind of just like an experience that opened my eyes to the scale of the taboos and stigmas and how their real life implications were pretty evident when it came to especially government schools and like how they operated and the lack of menstrual
Mhm.
education that was offered within those institutions. So prior to our first infrastructure project, we actually have like the lead of the Pakistan chapter go into these schools and interview like the school teachers and whatnot and the staff to kind of see like if they were even willing to accept our help in the first place. So
Mhm.
we did have this one woman who ran this government school. It was like situated within like a field, so it was like crops around, and then there was just this tiny school, like one room school for like children of all ages, like regardless of like I guess their level of academic like understanding, we're able to like learn together, and like obviously it's because of the limited resources, but we still want to help them and kind of have them like distribute those resources equally. So before we began this project, we actually had her like give us a tour around the school, and we saw like the scale of like how deteriorated their bathrooms were and just the lack of menstrual education. We asked about their curriculums, and they said like that type of education doesn't exist. So I really saw like at first it was just me reading through like academic papers and research papers about what the problem was, but I guess I'd never really like conceptualized it until I got a report back from the lead of the chapter saying like this was the state of the schools over there. She even sent pictures to like supplement the understanding. So it was really like it coming to life and being like, oh yeah, these academics, these people who are writing research papers have actualized like and realized this problem, and they want to help solve it, and I can be like a main contributor to it. So actually seeing that for the first time through images even was really
Mhm.
eye-opening for me.
So, Samia, which part of Pakistan is your organization having the most impact in?
So right now we're focusing in Gujarat, and we're
Uh-huh.
expanding into Karachi, and we have chapters in Canada, in the US as well, where there's student leaders that are actively working to like draft targeted initiatives for these areas.
Mm-hmm. And Amani, for your organization, is it mostly Karachi, or are you expanding as well?
It's in Karachi, Islamabad, Peshawar, and Multan.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
Lahore, yeah.
Oh, wow. So, in terms of having help people, volunteers who are dedicated to your organizations or missions locally, have you been able to build teams there, or gotten any kind of support or help in terms of the logistics and the day-to-day from folks there?
Definitely. I have teams in each city where Providentia is based in, and they help me sort of run the website and I guess sort of like tend to technical difficulties which
Mm-hmm.
arise sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it wasn't really a problem getting the volunteers because there's so many change-minded people that I didn't even know I was surrounded by. So when I like announced that I was starting this mission, I just got like this stream of support in that the people were signing these Google Forms to volunteer almost immediately. And it was really heartwarming for me to see, but also like we were able to establish chapters within like each country or each city very quickly, and it was just a very eye-opening experience. Like so many people know that this problem exists, but they just needed an outlet to like collectivize their support in, and I guess like we offered that to them.
Mm-hmm. That's great. That's great. Um, I want to ask you both a question unrelated to your organizations, what you do for fun. You're seniors, so I'm guessing the academic pressure must be immense at this time. And in the last few years, especially the foundational years of your organizations, probably was more pressure from school. So what do you do for fun, Samia?
Oh, so I recently, like this year, got a cat, and I love taking care of him, but in terms of a more academic oriented thing I do for fun, I also have a podcast. So I'll launch some bi-weekly podcasts, and it's just fun hanging out and just like talking about whatever I feel like talking about.
Oh, so what's your podcast about?
It's about the South Asian identity, my experience with it, like how I am able to connect in these like various social circles with my identity and like challenges and kind of just like the benefits of having these dual identities. And it's about finding myself as a Pakistani-American.
And how did that help you in your mission for
Of
your
course, yeah.
Of course, right? It's so aligned in your case as well. And Amani, what do you do for fun?
Well, for me, I've been at the same school for almost 13 years, so I've been trying to soak up like every moment with my friends in our last year. But I also love watching like Office reruns. I've watched the entirety of the show like 9 times. Yeah.
The
But also
British one or the American version?
the American one.
The American one. That's fun. Who's your favorite character?
Dwight.
No. That's
Funny.
funny.
Yeah.
So going forward, if there was a message, if you say you were on a board in Times Square and you have a minute to say anything about your organizations, requesting help or getting involved, or what would be your message? Imagine that you're in Times Square right now on a board. Well, we can start with you, Amani.
Sure. So I guess I would say, well, because people deserve like access to education all around the world, I would probably like start with the question like, wouldn't you want access to education? That's sort of my grabber. And probably just like talk about like what it means for a child to like sort of get a book and sort of expand their knowledge, something along the lines of that.
Anything special for Pakistani-American uh, students, children?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a South Asian like young woman, whenever I go to Pakistan, sometimes I'm hit with the question, "Oh, you're getting to the point where you have to think about marriage, right?" And obviously that's not what I'm thinking about. So I guess I would say that probably don't let the challenges of stereotypes sort of, I guess, like discourage you from like representing like what you believe in, and always try to make an active difference because you can make a change at any point in your life. You can be however old you are.
Samia, same question to you. You have the Times Square board now, a billboard.
I would just say like break the cycles of misinformation, like similar to what Imani said. So that would kind of bring to mind like what type of misinformation is being spoken about, because I think you can like allude to like hundreds of different things that obviously being this like very disparate, like poverty-stricken area, you're able to see like how misinformation is able to seep through and kind of expose and like affect like communities in Pakistan. So I would kind of just like implore them to donate resources, uplift like these marginalized communities in Pakistan. And I would just kind of say that, like, especially if you're someone from the Pakistani diaspora, like you're in this unique position to make a change, and like you have these opportunities and these resources, and it's kind of up to you to see like, do you want to benefit yourself and kind of like start your generational like, I guess, legacy from here, or do you want to help the people that got you here to begin with? And it is up to you to invest in your communities back home and build them up so that they're able to have the same opportunities as you and able to succeed, I guess, to the extent that you have already established yourself. So then we can have these community bonds and this community legacy that doesn't start in the US, that doesn't start in the West, but rather is an extension of where we come from and is in line with our cultural identity and our roots, because it's really important to just kind of have that sense of identity and sense of purpose that's not rooted in like a Western country, because obviously you're not from there. So you should really focus on the communities that built you to who you are today. And for anyone who wants to donate to our organization, obviously they can check out our website. It's nasai.ngo.org, or they could look at our Instagram, which is nasai.ngo. And through that, there are links for donations, there are links to volunteer, start your own project. It's a very grassroots initiative. So we're very lenient on how people if people want to contribute, how would they contribute? So anything from starting a project to starting a chapter, like it's very freehand, whatever you want to do, however you want to contribute, like we're so open to like getting help from anybody.
That's fantastic. And thank you for sharing that. Amaani, I'll request you to share the same, your organization's website, and if there are any avenues that folks who want to help and support your organization could do so.
Yeah, so you can just search up Providentia Books and it'll take you right to the donation website as well. And in order to like collect books from other like institutions, you can contact me and my team, which is also on the website.
Last question for both of you, because I love to read and I want to know what everybody's reading. What are you reading, Amaani?
I just finished A Little Life, which is an amazing book. It's very sad, but yes, I love that book.
Fiction?
It's fiction.
Okay. Samia, anything that you could share with us?
I just finished Sula by Toni Morrison, which is like the best author ever. Like she talks about
Yes.
the Black American experience and how that has ties with slavery, and it's a very historically packed, but also very much a nonfiction narrative.
Okay, you're going to get me started. I think we have to have another podcast just to share our reading list. And I would love that. But listen, thank you so much for your time. I know how critical every minute, especially over the weekend, is for both of you. So much going on. We're wishing you the very best of luck and warm wishes for the next few months. I know big decisions coming up. And thank you for your time and sharing your experiences. I've learned a lot. And I'm sure a lot of young and older Pakistanis are going to benefit from this, especially seeing your passion and your impact on your communities, which are far from you geographically. It's very impressive and very encouraging and heartwarming. So thank you for doing all you're doing, and thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Bye bye.